All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm sure there are a few others that will trickle in as the webinar goes today. So first of all, I would like to thank all of you for joining us today on our webinar Wednesday. My name is Keith Morris, and today we will be going over Creo Illustrate. Just a quick agenda. First, I'm going to start with some introductions, first of myself and a little bit about my background and experience. And then secondly, a little bit about PDSVISION as a company. After that, I'm going to go into just kind of an overview of what Creo Illustrate is, what it does, some of the features. After that, obviously, I'm just going to give you guys just a quick demo of what you can do in Creo Illustrate. During this time, throughout this whole webinar, there is a box you guys can type questions into. So feel free to ask them as it goes along, but I will not be addressing them until the end. So either way, if you want to save your questions to the end or as I'm demoing things, that's fine. Either way is fine with me. I will address those questions at the end. So my objective today is to show you guys Creo Illustrate and how easy it is to set up and render your technical illustrations. My name is Keith Morris. I am a CAD tech specialist here with PDSVISION. I do have background in 3D design, which stems from a lot of both the creative and technical side of 3D content creation. I also have a background in additive manufacturing, or what it is most known as is 3D printing. And then I also have a background in animation and rendering and illustration as well. PDSVISION, we are one of PTC's top partners in the world. We are a platinum reseller, so that's the biggest highlight of PDSVISION. The headquarters is in Stockholm, and we operate in 12 other countries. I'm going to quickly just explain some concepts here about this digital transformation journey and what that means. These are challenges in certain areas of the manufacturing pipeline that the industry wants to overcome in these specific areas of manufacturing. So the idea is to progressively move towards a digital transformation in the way these types of areas are handled. So just to point out a couple examples, when we're talking about products, can we make the product smart and connect them to IoT and so forth? And then, these all have different categories under each area in which we're talking about the digital transformation journey. In addition to that, if any of you guys have followed our YouTube channel, we've had several series called the Digital Thread series. And what that means is exactly what we're looking at on our webinar today, and other various demos that have series that are focused on certain areas and functionalities that you can do within Creo that are tied to any given area in these 4 rings. So these 4 rings are broken down by the manufacturing pipeline, and with 1 being product virtualization, and then 4 being all the way through how you're going to connect your products. Today, we are looking at technical publications, which falls within the product virtualization ring. So I just want to mention one more time, be sure to definitely check out our YouTube channel, PDSVISION. We have a lot of very resourceful and helpful videos that fall, especially in the Digital Thread series, that will expand your knowledge and be able to learn various functionalities in Creo and beyond. So with those logistics out of the way, I'm now going to get into describing here what Creo Illustrate is. It is PTC's software solution to create high quality renders or illustrations which you are to use in your work instruction guides. So basically what it does, it takes your assembly files, and when you put your assembly files in this software, you can set them up. You can set up different figures, different positions in order to render or publish out several images all at once. And then you take those images and then you implement them or build them into your guide. I want to stress and point out that Creo Illustrate is not used for building the guides themselves or the entire manual. It is just for the illustration part where you're taking your assembly and creating the illustrations based off the assembly or parts. So it is very intuitive. It's very easy to navigate and work around. So it is nice to be able to have that, because when you have something that's intuitive, it allows your workflow to go much quicker. You can even create animations and animated step sequence videos for people that also want to see something in motion on how something might be assembled or disassembled. With that, I'm going to go into Creo Illustrate now and show you guys a lot of these features that'll get you these high quality illustrations. All right. First of all, before I do anything with this demo, I would like to shout out and greatly thank Brunswick Bowling. This is one of their sub-assemblies for one of their pin setter machines. So this is a very small sub-assembly in their huge assembly, and I just want to make it clear that this is not a part or assembly that PDSVISION made. This is from Brunswick Bowling, and that they graciously allowed us to use this sub-assembly for today's demonstration. So I'm just going to kind of give you guys an overview of what's going on here and what we can do. I have already set this up basically to almost nearly completed file. So anytime over here on the left, I'm able to see these different states that this assembly is in, and so each one could be different. So I have my standard view. I have just an assembled view of the subassembly altogether. And of course, there's an exploded view here, which that we are used to seeing also in Creo Parametric. Another huge feature that you can do in here is create callouts. You can do them automatically. I do like to set them up manually instead, though. I feel like there's more control, but either way is very simple to set up, and you can get these basically set these this assembly up to render or publish out your high quality illustrations. Another type of illustration we might see is a section view, and basically an inset that blows this area up to be able to see within a separate window. We have the ability to add freestanding notes or notes that are pointing to a part or assembly. And then lastly, I have here a this is a different render aesthetic. It's a different display than what you saw in the illustrations. What we see typically in printed or PDF guides is this rendering style called HLR, so to where it looks hand drawn. But I'm using this rendering style because this is actually set up as a step sequence video. So in here, I could set up different steps and different states all within one figure. And each step will tell you basically how this subassembly goes together. And then as you're watching through the steps, it even lists how it's going together. So in step 1, it places the bearings. In step 2, it's going to secure the bearings and so forth. So just to give you a quick example, there is a rendered out video, but if I were to preview this sequence, here starts with assembly steps. I'm going to knock this down. And within preview, I can actually hit play on each individual steps. You could see as I'm doing that, there's a step 2, secure bearings, which we just saw. Step 3, place pinion gear, and then it continues to go down the line. Now, when I publish this out as a video, it all plays together at once. However, you can publish these steps out as their own separate video. So it's up to you how you want to for it to be viewed. It also depends on who's viewing it. Work instruction guides aren't just for shop floor manufacturing floors. It's also for us as consumers. We see these types of things in products such as IKEA furniture, and it has those little 5 by 7.5 pamphlets that we flip through. What I also like in Creo Illustrate is the big thing when we get back to this. If I go to this callouts here, we have an item list at the bottom here. We could bring up an item list, and there's also a description of the part, which was actually a parameter that was set up within Creo Parametric. So, but we'll get into that a little later, but it's something I just wanted to point out. You can actually export this item list as a .csv file, and then you can copy that into any sort of documentation that you have. So you don't have to sit there and type it all up. That would be pretty time consuming. You could just move this over to a Word document. So an example of a page of that document and what that might look like, I kind of have a completed page here in Word. So I just, set up a quick template, and what that looks like. This is a rendered out vector graphic from Creo Illustrate. And it was just placed in this Word document. And then here we have the item list. So, you got your item number, what's its part number, its quantity, and then what the description is. And then you can actually go in here and edit that as well. When you copy it in here, you do have to convert it to a table, but that's pretty simple and quick. So I just wanted to show you how easy it is, what the workflow is basically like from Creo Illustrate. And then when you're taking those images and the CSV files into wherever or whatever you're creating your final guide or document in. So I have just a Windows folder here that breaks down like where I'm saving these published images. So I broke it down by image types. So there's JPEGs, PNGs, and then SVGs, which is a more universal or common type of vector graphic. And to me, those are the best because they're scalable, which means you could blow them up and they will maintain their quality. So if I were to just open one of those, and I kind of want to zoom in on this, I could show you guys, this is just the graphic, of what we just saw in that Word document. But I also have my PNGs as well of the same thing. So there's the PNG of the same thing. What's nice is you can customize the size, or you can leave it to what Creo publishes it out as. I personally just leave it to what Creo publishes it at, and then I crop it within, like that image we saw in Word. I was able to just crop that down and able to get everything to fit on one page. So, and you can see this is actually a much better, like, high quality image than the PNG. So I was able to scale this up or down, and it maintained its quality. And then one more quick thing I want to show before I get into how to set some of this up. I even have the video file of the subassembly going together. So there's step one. What's nice about this, I can choose how long the break is in between each step. By default, it's usually, I think it's usually 2 seconds. I chose to make it 3 seconds so you can see these components in this subassembly going together. So what's nice about a video is this can be, this is a pretty unique way of showing versus using an image with just explode lines. This is actually seeing it in motion on how it all goes together. And this may be an oversimplified, way to show all this, but it is simple to set up, whether you're working with something as simple as this or even a complex massive assembly. So, viewers can play it and pause it, do what they need to do with the physical, actual manufactured part, play the next step, pause it again, and then keep going down the line and just continue to follow the video. So it's just an extra feature that you don't have to render out videos, but it is an option. All right, so I'm going to switch here to a different file. Give me 1 second. All right, so here, some of this is sort of already set up in a way, but I wanted to start going over some of what some of this looks like. Before I get into these figures here and where these illustrations are set up, when you first open Creo Illustrate, if I were to go to File, New, and this is what I'm seeing. If you already have Creo Parametric, what is best to do is when you're starting a new file, you're either going to use this, import option, and you're going to either choose embed or link. Linking is the best because it literally creates a link between the assembly from Creo Parametric back to Illustrate. The advantage of that allows you to be able to change something on the part, re-export the PVZ file, and then it automatically updates into Creo Illustrate. But I'd also like to point out, you can change it doesn't have to be PVZ. You can also, the other two common types are IGS files and step files if you're not working in Creo Parametric. So Creo Illustrate will take those in as well. Either way, you're using the assembly to work. So, but if you already have Creo Parametric, definitely using PVZ is what's best, especially because it also works in Creo View. So I just wanted to point out that flexibility when you're using the PTC product family. All right, so this was brought in, and this is basically, once you set your default view, you basically get your standard orientation. From here, I'm going to easily start creating figures, and what each figure ultimately will be the illustration. There are different, I mentioned earlier, there are different rendering types. So render mode right now is an HLR, and that's how you would get that hand-drawn illustration look and just black lines and black and white. You notice the video I had was in a different render mode because the video is obviously not going to be on a page. So we saw it in something called shading with edges. So you'd actually see the appearances that were applied in Creo parametric onto this part. So for now, I'm just going to keep it at HLR. And all I'm doing is hitting new figure or duplicating the previous one. And then all it does is create a new figure at the bottom. So, and then I can rename it as I'm going along. So this next figure I named Exploded. It's important to use this figure view up here because that determines, even if I were to rotate out of this, I could just go to figure view and it'll put it back to where you had it placed. But you place the angle or the camera wherever you best see fit. You can use any of these orientations that we see in parametric, but you can also rotate or zoom in as much as to wherever you see fit, however you want the illustration to look. And to start exploding this, there's two ways. There's something called Smart Explode in Creo Illustrate. I personally like to just manually use it. So I just like select these parts, which by the way are in this SBOM. So it has your assembly and it has essentially what you would see in your model tree with just the parts. So you have your SBOM here, and as I'm selecting through here, you can see these parts highlighting. But I just like to select this in the graphics area to be able to move parts in and out. So that's really all I'm doing is using these movement tools to drag these parts to where I want them positioned. What's nice is it has that measurement you see that's going 78 and to the 80s in the millimeter in order for you to see how far you're dragging it out. So you can sort of reference in between, what you want, how far you want these to be from each other. And you can see that now I've got this easily created exploded view, and it didn't even take long at all. Even when I was exploding it from its assembled state, it was just dragging these parts out from this base plate here. So pretty easy to set up. And of course, after you have something exploded, you can start creating explode lines. So these 4 screws, for example, if I were just hit explode lines, it already knows like where it's going through. And it knows that these lines are referring back to its master location basically. So it knows to just make those explode lines. What I like, you have a lot of customization as well with the explode lines. You got some pen weights in here. You could even create sort of your own pen weight and how you want that to look. So then you would just go through each part and then start adding your explode lines. You also have the ability to change the axis order. A more complicated assembly, you would see parts, maybe to the above this and below this, and you'd be able to manipulate the explode lines to drag them to where they need to go in order to show its proper assembly. So, the same thing here. I can go back to explode lines, and that's going to draw another one. You can also choose to change, if you want a halo on or not. Here's the pen weight. Manage pens, you can edit any of these. So there's Phantom, where it's kind of it's got like a shade, kind of a hidden view. So like Phantom Thin, you can kind of see it's got like a very thin, faint line right through there. So yeah, that's how to set up an exploded state. Callouts, that's a huge thing. I really like how you can set up and how easy it is to set up callouts in here as well. Earlier, I showed you the item list for this subassembly, and depending what you select, it's going to show up. Either it's going to show up under this attributes tab, to where when you click on the parts, it's got all the information from Creo parametric. So, for example, this description one is actually the name of the part. So this is a parameter that was actually added in Creo parametric. So then later on, we can export that as a CSV file and use in our documents. But so we can also potentially, if you wanted the the balloon or the call out to have its name. So let me get rid of this bottom menu. What that starts to look like is when you go under this item list tab, you have the option to choose manual or automatic. Automatic just assumes where you want these call outs placed. So again, manual is a lot better because you can choose to set up how you want them positioned in place and what type of information you want the call out to have. So I always stick with manual. What I set up first is the numbering scheme. So edit numbering scheme. So when I referred to one of Brunswick's manuals with this part, this entire subassembly was 19. So all these components would then have 19 and so forth down. So I'm gonna put 19 and then I'm gonna change to ABC. So I set up the numbering scheme first, and then under my callouts, I actually have some of this set up already, but because you can create your own callouts, you can even edit existing ones that are default within Creo Illustrate. So I did manipulate one of these, and then I also added item number and quantity, item number and description. What's cool about those is that these attributes, these are parameters that were added and set up in Creo Parametric by the engineer. So I use the description one because that's the name of the part. And then I added that to these attributes, and I was able to name, okay, item number and description. You don't have to have the description on the call out. Most don't. Most is just that number and that number and that letter right after it. But I'll show you what that looks like. So once I have that selected, so item number and description, I started with this pinion gear. So you can see, okay, it started 19A, and then there's the description and if I were to bring up this bottom menu back up, you can see, if I have this selected, there it is right there. It might be hard to see for some of you guys, but it says pinion gear, right hand, and that's the description there. And then this 19A is coming from the manual numbering scheme I had already set up. So those are the two things that are pretty easy to set up. And then from there, if I'll show you another type here where it has the quantity. From there, and Illustrate knows which one is A, which one is B, which one is C. So it doesn't necessarily, if I were to choose that chain wheel first, it would have listed it as 19B. So what's nice about that is it's sticking to the already those parameters that were already set up. So another example here where I had no outline. So let's say I didn't want that description there. I would choose I edited this no outline call out, and so now it's just 19B. I could go in and change the line weight of these lines too. I can choose for them to have, I could choose for them to, editing the call outs is pretty easy. I could choose for them to have like a rectangle around, like a border. Here's like, like that. And then once you drag it out, you literally can just position it wherever you want. It's how you want to organize the image. There is one more type of call out I want to show you guys. So, with these four hex bolts right here, if I have them, selected first, and I go to call outs, I go to item number and quantity, there you can see it put that. And it has, you may only draw, it depends how you want this set up. There may be a line only going to one of them, and then times 4, but usually there's a line for each one. Let's say I want to put a rectangle around that as well. And so I start to get how this looks. And then you just continue to go down the line and, drag your call outs, and literally that's how easy it is to set all that up. So a section view. So all these, this is what's nice about this is if you're familiar with Creo Parametrics interface, it's basically a very similar layout as Creo Parametrics. So you got your tabs up here. So sectioning, you can choose to have either a planar or a quarter, but I'm going to choose x-axis, and I'm going to maybe flip it that way, just for example. So this is already a section view. I could go to show boundaries, and I could show, which way I want this flipped, basically. That's not letting me select it, but I can also show its, I would have to go into a different rendering view, but I could basically also get, do I want the cap to show? So cap section is already there. I have to go to a different render mode in order for that to show. So once I have that, I can choose use single color for section line, use single color for section cap, and hit that, and now it's capped like that. Let's see. In HLR, it doesn't show up. You have to have it in a. So here, if I go to flat shaded, you can see where it's sectioned off at. Now we in the previous file that was already set up, we also if right next to callouts, there's what's called insets. There's 3 different types, but you could sort of also manipulate and customize these as you see fit. So if I go to insert A, I can say, well, I'm gonna drag down on, here's the bigger window I need to move out of the way. Right there. And what I like about this is I could make this window pretty big. This is very good for showing detail, because it's another type of call out. So we're able to change like where we want this viewed, and how I want this, where I want it positioned as well. So and so if I have this, I could also go back to under callouts, we also have these different types of notes. So you can have a freestanding note, which is this, or you can have a note with a leader. So there's 2 different types of notes as well. You also have, you could be pointing to a reference. So I'm just going to add a free note, double click in here and say, bearing detail. And I can change that as well. All this is customizable. If I wanted to bring that up, change the shape, if I wanted a shape, around that, and place this wherever I wanted. So those are callouts, aren't just the numbers and the part description and all that. It's also where you would add notes and add different types of insets. One other quick thing I wanted to show you with exploded assemblies. Let me go back to this one. If I wanted to sort of, the benefit of always having the standard view is like, it's best to always like duplicate that view or hit new figure, because you always want something in a default state when you're working with your figures. But let's say you wanted these to return to their original location. You don't have to like drag them and guess. Restoring location is pretty easy. There's a restore location button, and you can choose restore selected to SBOM location, and it'll put it right back where it's supposed to go. So the reason I'm showing you guys that, because when you're ready to say, if you do want to set up a video, it will animate that step. I don't even have to drag it and try to guess where it goes. It'll animate that step. So I did copy the exploded, I did duplicate the exploded view. And the reason I did that before the explode lines were added. So I can now easily start to set up this for animation and a step sequence that shows in motion how this is assembled. So there's two different types. There's sequence and animation. Really, they both achieve the same thing. It's the same interface. It's just a matter of, with sequence, you can have steps listed. So this very top one is our default. You know, if I the step one was to, you know, put these, you know, these bearings back where they go, you know, I'll do that. So that would, this bearing and these two bearings, you know, would be animated with this bearing retainer right here. So those could all be animated at this, those can all be animated together basically. So if I have record content on right here, which it is always by default, I'm just gonna say, you know, select these two bearings and say restore selected to SBOM location. And right here, we call these tracks in Creo Illustrate. So those will go back to where those are supposed to go, and you can see it animated those automatically. I could just play the step and it'll go. And I can shorten these or lengthen them as far as I want them to go. It's, you know, they don't have to be slow, they don't have to be fast. You know, it could be a little bit quicker. Let's say I wanted this animated with those and I forgot to do that. Well, I could just drag it back and then say restore selected to SBOM location. I'm going to turn this and you can see where it goes. And then as I go through this right here, I'm going to drag those a little bit closer to where that's at. So created a new track for that part. I'm going to drag it closer for that one to show you guys, you know, that now they're all animated together. You know, so here's, you could name each step. I'm just going to keep that as step one. But under description, I'm going to say place bearings. And now it knows like, okay, when we preview this sequence, okay, it has step sequence. I'm going to play the first step and it should show up there. Place bearings. There it is. So it'll say the step number and then what it does in that step. And then I would go forth and continue on. If you have like screws with threads, you could even animate them as far as like their special effects. You can choose these effects to fly in, fly out, but for screws, you can actually have them like flash or pulse a color and then actually screw clockwise or counterclockwise, depending on if you're showing something disassembling or showing something assembling, you can do that as well. I could do that to this. It won't show up very well because we don't see the threads on here, but but you could have them flash like in turn. So that's another thing too, is like if I in this first step, you know, wanted to back this up and have these flash before they were placed, I can do that as well. And then they would go in place. So there's some neat little effects and tricks you can do to your videos. You know, so once, the last thing I kind of want to show you guys here is it's also, you just keep building these figures up until you have as many illustrations as you need with a single assembly or sub-assembly. You know, I only have 3 or 4 right here, but you know, a larger assembly could have, you know, up to 50 or even 100. It's best you get all of that set up first, because then when you're ready to render or publish out these illustrations, it's really easy to set it up to get them to publish all out at the same time. So I'm just going to show you real quick. I have an empty folder right here. So this is where I'm going to have my images and my video go. So under published, the first thing I want to do is say publish separate files. I'm not going to publish them yet. All I'm doing is, no, let me back up. I went too far, I went two step. I'm going to go to my publish settings. Right here, it has my figures and it says, okay, Creo 3D. Well, that doesn't mean much to me. I want to add, I want different file types of each of these figures. So that's the whole point of like publishing these out at the same time. So I'm going to add this, and this will be my vector. So I'm going to just say vector, and the format I'm going to choose to be a 2D illustration and choose SVG. A 2D illustration and image are basically the same thing. It's just with 2D illustration is the option you select for vector, which is that high quality image, and that it's always scalable. So now I have that. The next thing I want to add is, PNG. So if I go to image, I'm going to say PNG. It's a portable network graphic. Here I could change my size if I wanted to, or I could change it to inches and boost up this resolution maybe, but this is its default size here. So, and then here's where I would select PNG in here, right there. So format and hit OK. And then I want to add a movie. So this will be my assembly video. What's cool about this is now I have end of each step, so I'm gonna say 3 instead of 2 seconds, because I feel like 3 gives a little bit more of a chance to view it. And here I could change the size of the video, and also I want it to be high quality. So I'm building this list first of publish options. I'm not publishing quite yet. The PVZ file from this list, I'm just going to leave it, but I'm not going to choose to actually publish it out. And then once I'm good, now I have these columns and these rows. So I'm going to turn off in fact, I'm going to go to remove PVZ from that list. So now I have, okay, assembly video. So obviously that's not going to be, a PNG. So I'm going to turn off all the views under assembly video because it's not going to do anything for those. And then I'm going to uncheck. It's basically building this list of all the views you want rendered out and what type of formats. So it could just do it all at once. It does it very quickly. So I'm just going to hit OK there. So I got standard view, exploded, callouts, section, and then my video is kind of in this own category here. So once I have that set up, I could go back into publish separate files, and choose my folder and save it to there. Illustrate will sort of think and do its thing for a little while, and you'll eventually see the files pop up in this folder. Slowly, it'll start to put them in there. And then, so there's the video, and then here's all my images. So here's my PNG versions of these images. Here's the video, place bearings. I only did one step, but then it would have all the other steps in there as well. And then, if I go what we were seeing earlier, I kind of got to zoom in on this. And that could be moved out of the way. I can change the font size and publish just this image out if I wanted to, in PNG and in vector. There's exploded here. So this is my exploded view. Once these images are rendered out though, then from there, wherever you have them saved is then where you start to work them into your documents. So, I kind of have a blank version here, so, I would just go to, opinion, what was it called? pinion gear support assembly. So, you know, I have that, and then from here, you know, in the Word doc, I don't know what you guys use for, you know, designing your documents or putting those together, but if we're just using Word, you know, I'm just going to insert that image. And I'm going to go to, just put that callout in there. So I'm going to kind of scale it, and then I'm also going to kind of crop it here so it'll fit within this page. And I know this isn't a completed image by any stretch. I'm just saying how you get these in here. And then obviously we can get all this on one page. And then we would end up with, you know, what we saw earlier, like right here. So this was, I won't go into detail about this, but basically this list was from an exported CSV file, which I have here. So this is literally what came from Illustrate. It can export CSV files of your item list. And all I did was copy this over to the document. And then I highlighted everything and just basically converted it to a table. And I had to finagle it a little bit, but so usually this is what we see on any given page of that sort of documentation. So that's how you get these images set up and rendered and published out. So there are a lot there's a lot more tools you can work with in here. But Illustrate's really not an overly complex piece of software because we're really just setting up images. You know, so there are other things you can do. You can also add like annotations and measurements and things like that. You can also add, there's 3 types of different, so there's decals you could add in here. If I switch this render mode, if I had it like colored, you can actually also color these parts to make them stand out more. Like if you're not going to do a print, but there's textures, there's decals, symbols such as tools that you can animate, kind of like these stickers. There's a symbol library, so you can add all that to your images as well. It really depends how detailed you need to get. So let me just pop back into my presentation. So real quick, the benefits of Creo Illustrate is it's really easy to use, and you can create the highly detailed illustrations. So that's, you know, I was showing like how quickly you can set those up and how intuitive it is. Animations and step-by-step sequences and still images can be published all at once. And then those are easily worked into your PDFs or Word document. PVZ files are interchangeable with the Creo product family. So if you are already working in parametric, you definitely want to export your assemblies as PVZ files because that's going to allow for that link to work easily and properly inside of Illustrate. And just one other quick thing I want to mention, this gets more advanced usage. AR is becoming popular. So you can take your sequences and set up a PTC Vuforia for AR implementation, which means you would take an animated assembly, and basically if you were to set it up with AR goggles, you would see it in a virtual space, like in the space you're working in. So at this point, I will address any questions. Let me see if there are any at this point yet. I don't think I see any. So, except for one. Sorry, it looks like it's kind of cut off. There we go. All right, so I do have some questions. Let me see. Let me get to these. Adam is asking if we can add text to each of the slides versus exporting to Word. If you mean the text as in but you can add notes and text to any of those images. But ideally, the creation of the document is typically already set up with a template. So for example, you usually have a template that's awaiting images from software like this to just add in. And then from there, the text within that document is edited by whoever is building the document. So I was just using Word as an example. Typically, Word is not used for building the guides. We have what's called Arbor Text Editor, where it maintains the PVZ link. So if you were to do it, if you were to say change the size of one of those parts, like a dimension on one of those parts in Creo parametric, it would, and you resaved it out as a PVZ file over the original, it would update inside of Creo Illustrate. And then if that's tied to, say, Arbor Text Editor or something like that, it will also update the image, all the images within that as well. So, but I don't know, everyone has a different tool to create the guides. Some might use Acrobat DC, which is the full version of Acrobat Reader to create PDFs. So to simply put, you can add text to the images, but you're not necessarily going to want to, you're not going to build the guide in Creo Illustrate. It's more, it's focused for creating the illustrations. I hope that answers your question, Adam. If I didn't clarify enough, just ask, put in the chat again. There's a couple more questions here. Okay, great, cool. I'm glad I was able to answer that. Bridget, is it possible to animate complex movement in the exploded view? For example, if something is first inserted, then slid into place. Yes, what I demonstrated was just returning it to the SBOM location, but you don't have to do that. I would recommend it because usually you're showing the assembly of something, but if you wanted to show something else of just another piece moving, you can manually move and transform those around. You could even rotate them. And each track represents a movement. So if I were to move it in the X axis and then in the Z axis, it would record each of those as a movement within like one step. So you can absolutely, you could definitely do, more complex movements than what I was showing. I was just showing that it just automatically returns to the SBOM location, but you can also manually do as many movements as you need within one step. And then your second question, what export resolution would we recommend for maintaining high quality graphics, but not burdening the main instruction documentation with large files? I personally believe that PNG is typically, PNG and vector graphics aren't going to kill your machine storage wise or memory wise. JPEGs are a little bit less quality and they are the smallest type of file, but it's not going to get you the best image quality. I really think sticking with SVG, or some companies have used CGM files, both are vector. That's not going to kill your machine, and it gets you the highest quality. So either of those two formats for images work best. I hope I answered both of your questions, Bridget. Let me know if I did or didn't. Let's see. I don't see any other questions right now. If anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask. Ed has two questions. How would I import custom graphics to apply to a part? For example, specialized warning labels. Number 2 is placement of graphics limited to planar surfaces. You would import custom graphics like under, it would either be under the label or the decal. And you can add those to your, it doesn't have to be a planar surface. At least to my, I've never personally tried it, but it's not limited to just like a planar surface. Those decals and graphics, depending on how your page is going to be set up, it can be flat to the screen, but of course, if you need something on a part or assembly itself, a lot of those are set up to have those directly on there as well. So you can use custom graphics to bring in as well. Terry's asking, how do we set the background to dark? You could set the background honestly to whatever color you want, dark gray, blue, green. You could even have it like, you could have it, what's the word I'm looking for? You could even have a gradient of 2 different colors, white, black to white, dark gray to white, whatever. Pretty easy to set up. It's not as obvious though. You have to navigate that a little bit, but you absolutely can change the background. Nowadays we can assume that these, unless it's on a consumer level, many of these are created both in print and PDF, and sometimes the PDF varies from the printed version, so you have the flexibility to add those types of colors and backgrounds and things. Ed, you're asking if those decals would be parametrically available, or if they would be available in Creo parametric, basically. I've only seen like decals and those types of things in model-based definition. I've never seen them like on a part or on an assembly. So it would just be best to set that up in Creo Illustrate. Kind of to expand on that, you can have the symbol or the graphic. It would be whatever plane you're using model-based definition on, or if you're just having it choose to be flat to the screen. You can even use custom graphics in that sense in Creo Parametric, but not on the part or assembly itself. James, I will get your email address after this. There is a link which breaks down and shows what you get. There's actually 1, 2, 3. I think there are 4 versions, or I'm sorry, 4 license types of Illustrate that show exactly what you get with each of those. But in a nutshell, the biggest difference is many advanced users like Professional, because those can handle massive assemblies, which means it can literally handle huge, very large assembly files. You also get some neat little nuances when it comes to rendering types and things of that nature. But I'll have your email address after this is finished, and I'll email you that link. They have like these check boxes and these like columns that show what you get with each license type. Ed, you're asking if licenses are locked or can be floating. They can be either. You can have a locked license of Illustrate or a floating to use for. Looks like people are starting to slowly drop off. I just want to let you guys know, if you do not have questions, in a couple days you will be able to see this webinar again on our YouTube channel. I would strongly encourage you guys to check that out, because again, there are many great videos and demos and webinars and resources on our YouTube channel. So I highly encourage you to visit that. Best thing about YouTube is it's free. So if you don't have questions, feel free to leave, but I'll hang out to see if there are any more questions. And thank you for joining us, by the way, everyone. If I didn't say that earlier, I'm glad you were able to join us today.